how do I get more leads? How do I market my MSP? How do I make sure my marketing is working? And those are all questions and topics of conversation I hear when I talk to MSPs all over the place. And the truth is that there is no easy button for marketing. There's lots that goes into it, and that's what we're going to cover today. My name is Adam Hanneman. Welcome to Ramblings of a Geek. I've been in the MSP space for the better part of a couple decades. I've talked to a lot of marketing people. I've talked to a lot of salespeople. I've learned a lot about the topic. So let's jump into today's video, which is really all about scaling and growing and getting some results from your marketing and prospecting efforts. As you grow your MSP, what gets you from one stage to the next might not get you further down the road because things evolve over time, and marketing is no different. So today we're really talking about that scaling up of your marketing engine as you grow your MSP. But before we dive too deep into this conversation, there's a couple prerequisites that I think we should cover first. The first one is you need to have a solid target client profile. Now, I recorded a video all about target client profile, and I'll link that up above and below in the description. But the reality is you need a very narrow target client profile to aim your marketing efforts towards. Because if you just try to market towards anybody with a checkbook and a computer, it's going to be far harder to land clients you actually want to land. Now, you might take a client with a checkbook and a computer. That's up to you. You don't want to cast a wide net because you're just going to attract the wrong type of customers, and that's just not what you want to do. You also want to spend some time prospecting and marketing. Those are a little bit different in my book. I think prospecting that's building your personal network, that's going to networking meetings and doing those kinds of things. I don't think that's truly marketing activity. I think that's really all about building relationships, and that's a really important thing to do. And where marketing is that, the website and the kind of the general market awareness. And I think that's a thing that you should spend some time on, but especially earlier on, you're going to spend a lot more time on the prospecting side of things. Now, I actually created a whole prospecting video. I'll also link that up above and in the description as well, where I talk a lot about all the different prospecting things because I think it's really important to cover all of those in a little bit more in depth as well. The third prerequisite is that you need to spend time and effort on this on a consistent basis. If you yo-yo your efforts up and down and you spend a lot of time one week and almost no time the next week, that yo-yo effect is going to show up in the longer term results as well. So I want you to start thinking about spending a little bit of time every single day to move that marketing and prospecting engine forward, because I think 15 to 30 minutes a day on average is going to yield you better and more consistent results in the long run. You're also going to notice that I'm not going to talk a lot about cold calling and hiring agencies and those kinds of things until you get over $1 million in revenue. Now, you certainly could do that sooner, but I think your best return on that time and energy and money investment is spent elsewhere earlier on in your MSP's growth trajectory. All right, with that out of the way, let's dig in a little bit deeper, because I think there's three common stages or modes that you might be in as it relates to your sales and marketing efforts. And I think it's important that we cover them, on their own a little bit, right? So the first stage is really all about that startup mode, right? You're getting going, you're zero to $250,000 in revenue, and you're just trying to get your next client and move your business forward. But that second stage really is that kind of growing up mode a little bit, right? This is that $250,000 to $1 million stage, right? Things change a little bit and you're going to adjust some stuff. And then once you get over $1 million, that's really kind of that off and running stage. And that opens the doors to a number of different things. So that's how I'm going to kind of structure this video. And then as I get into each of these different stages, I'm going to talk about prospecting and marketing a little bit separately. I'll talk about prospecting first and the marketing second, and we'll kind of work our way through the different stages. I also want to mention that this stuff builds on each other, right? So if you haven't necessarily mastered some of the earlier on stuff, I think it's worth watching and mastering those kind of things, even if you are a little bit larger. So I think there's something for everybody across the whole video. So let's go ahead and dive in a little bit deeper. So let's start with startup mode, right? That's $0 to $250,000 or so in revenue. And we're going to talk about kind of some of the basics, right? We want to make sure that we are doing some solid core things before I move on to the next level. So let's talk about prospecting first. And like I mentioned before, I have a whole video about prospecting, and that goes a little bit more in depth what I'm going to talk about right now. So if you want that, please go check out the video. But the short version of all the prospecting stuff is there's a few things you should do. The first thing is you need to join a networking group or a couple networking groups. That's things like chambers of commerce, BNI, other networking groups. And you don't necessarily need to join a chamber or BNI or whatever, but those are pretty common groups that you'll find in many markets. And in those groups, and when you join those groups, you really want to be an active member of those groups. But one of the things you want to look for when you are thinking about joining one of these groups is that you want to make sure your target client profile is represented in that room, either directly by the people who are in the room are in your target client profile, or indirectly in that the people that are in that room have clients that are in your target client profile, right? That's what you're looking for because you're trying to grow that network. And when you join a networking group, you want to be in it, you want to be active, you want to share referrals and those kinds of things. So the second thing is you want to really build your personal and your professional network. That's going out to coffee with people, going out to lunch, going to dinners, happy hours, meeting people in the world and building relationships. Our industry is relationship based, not transactional based. So go out there, build relationships and cultivate them because that's going to pay off in the long run. And while you're out there building these relationships, it's really important that you find people that live in your circles of influence. And what I mean by circles of influence are, there are a number of businesses that you can meet in the world that have basically the exact same target client profile as you, right? These are your cabling vendors, your commercial movers, commercial real estate agents, ISPs that don't have an MSP attached, copier companies that don't have an MSP attached. These types of businesses can be hugely beneficial to build relationships with because they have very similar clients that you do, and you guys can share referrals back and forth. And it's important that you share referrals with them as much as they share with you because it really is a two-way street and reciprocity is a thing. And so the last thing in this early stage prospecting side of the world is to ask for targeted referrals. I want you to stop asking for referrals the old-fashioned way, just by saying, hey, if you know someone that could use my services, would you please send it my way? It's far too generic and it won't get you the results you're looking for. Instead, I want you to start asking for referrals by saying, hey, I'm looking to add some new CPAs or new lawyers or new insert target client profile vertical here. I'm looking for it to add some of those folks. Do you have a lawyer, CPA, whatever, that you might want to introduce me to? Because I think that would be great. Or you could say, hey, I see that you're connected with Bob over at XYZ company. Would you make an introduction? I think I might be able to help him out, right? Those types of referral asks are going to get you more referrals than just asking the generic question. So ask for targeted referrals. So now let's shift over to the marketing side of things. It starts with the fact that your website can't suck. But I think there's some additional things to talk about as it relates to this, especially after talking with Harrison Barron over at Growth Generators a little bit. I'll actually throw his information down in the description of this video below because I think he's worth talking to and listening to in this space as well. But the reality is that there are some things you can do early stages that will help you ongoing with some SEO stuff. Now, this isn't like SEO stuff to bring in leads right away. This is SEO stuff to start layering in leads over time. And so it takes a little bit of time for that to happen. So starting early makes a ton of sense. So first, let's talk about making your website not suck. Your website can be fairly basic at this point. It doesn't need to be some super elaborate thing, but it does need to talk a little bit about who you are, how to find you. It basically shows that you're a real business and those kind of things. That's really, really important. Have a call to action or two as well. Again, you're trying to make sure that if people stumble across your website, that they're reaching out to you the right way, right? That's the important piece of your website not sucking. The thing I want to layer on here is write a blog post a week about topics that your clients, prospects, people that you want to consider using you as a service, write blog posts like that will help you over time. Now, you can lean into some of the GPT, services like ChatGPT or Copilot or some of those things to help write some of these things, but you don't want to just have them write it, and generate the content and dump it right on your website. You want to edit it, make it be in your voice, make sure it's accurate, those kinds of things. But you want to start building up some valuable content that will help Google know a little bit more about you, help people when they search for things on the internet might stumble across your website. Doing that early will help you on and on as you grow your business. And the last thing as it relates to this early stage marketing side of the world is you want to make sure you have a solid LinkedIn page and do a little bit of LinkedIn work, right? That's connecting with your target client profile people, connecting with your circles of influence, and posting here and there on your personal page and on your business page, especially like as you release blog posts. I'd put a link over there to those blog posts just because it's good to have a little bit of extra content out there. So when it comes to thinking about your weekly activities as it relates to these kinds of things, right? Because again, we're talking about consistency. It's really you want to attend any networking meetings, and you want to find a person to grab coffee or lunch or something like that with. Again, you're trying to make a connection and get one blog post out there every single week. If you can do those three things, you're on a good early start. All right, so let's get into the next phase here, right? You've you've hit $250,000 of revenue, you're not quite 2 million yet, and you've mastered the things I've talked about in the previous section. What do you do next? So again, we're going to start with prospecting. All right, so from a prospecting perspective, you've already joined a networking group or 3, you've cultivated some circles of influence, and you've kind of got that dialed in. So what's next, right? This is where thought leadership work comes in. You want to become a thought leader in that IT provider space, and I think there's a couple flavors that you can lean into that will help build this out for you. The first one is offer to speak at your networking group meetings, right? Especially if there's an opportunity for you to get up on some sort of a stage. And when you get on the stage or you're speaking to people about a topic, you want to teach them some stuff. This is not a pitch. Teach them something about what they can take back to their business today, implement today, and make their life better today, whether it's on their personal side or whether it's on the business side. The idea is you want to teach them something that they can leverage in their own world. When you do that, they're going to want to talk to you because you've helped them some way, shape, or form. And so what I would recommend that you do is you go through your talk, whatever the talk happens to be, and you say, by the way, I'm going to hang out over here. Come and meet me, and I'm happy to chat, answer any questions and talk in more depth and those kinds of things. And then make sure you hang around for a little bit. This is not a situation where you give your talk and you exit stage left and you're just gone, right? You don't want to do that. You want to hang out and be available for people to come and talk to you and have conversations with you. Now, if there aren't speaking slots available, offer to become a backup speaker or a last-minute speaker, because that happens from time to time where a scheduled speaker can't make it for whatever reason. If you have some content ready to go, you can just step in, kind of be the hero, and then get on stage anyway, right? The whole point is you want to be considered a thought leader. You want to have people want to come talk to you, and this is a great way of doing it. And you can create some goodwill with the organizers of that networking group as well. Another option is that if your target client profile has conferences or meetups or whatever else, try to go to some of those. Get a booth, try and get on stage if you can. Again, thought leadership conversations, but really kind of lean into being in their space and be seen in their space and make contacts over there, because that's going to help you over time. Now, you might wonder, what can you do with the content, right? Maybe you don't have a lot of content built. There's a couple of options, right? First, you're all smart enough to understand a few different things you could talk about, right? You could talk about security, you could talk about productivity, you could talk about AI and some of those things. And as it turns out, I'm actually working on a thought leadership AI video and slides to share with the community as well. And look for that here in the next few weeks. And I'll drop the link below once it's available. And I'll actually put a link above once it's available as well. But the idea is that you want to have a couple different things you can talk about and lean into, and it doesn't take you a ton of time to develop that content. It's probably gonna take you a few hours, but if you have it ready to go once or twice, you can use the content kind of over and over again, depending on where you are, especially sharing the information. The last thing here is that you should also consider maybe joining groups like EO or Vistage, something that's like more executive focused in your locale that connects you with some other business owners. Now, these aren't networking groups per se, these aren't referral groups necessarily, but it's a really good opportunity for you to get to meet other business owners and probably get some referrals out of it over time as well. Again, you're building relationships and you're learning as it relates to that. And when you do that, you're much more likely to cultivate relationships that will be beneficial over time as well. All right, now let's shift over to the marketing side of things, because there's a few things to talk about here. Now, the first thing is you want to continue on with blog posts. In fact, that's going to be a topic of conversation for a long time. So it's a thing you want to get used to. Eventually, you probably outsource it, but not today. I think you still just write some blog posts, continue on with that content generation for your website. That said, there's some other things that you can do to level up all of this. So let's get into that. Now, when it comes to writing these blog posts, there's a really good opportunity for you to start answering questions that your target prospects may have. Now, the best way of doing this is when you have a client asking you a question via email, or they say, hey, can you help me understand this, whatever this happens to be? Can you help me understand what the end of life of Windows means? What does it mean for me and my business? Or what does it mean to use AI? Like whatever the thing happens to be, whatever question they ask, you can turn the answer to that question into a blog post and then refer them to that blog post. But then also that blog post lives out in the world and it shows up in search engines, right? The clients ask you the question, you put forth the effort to write a response, and you pop it out there on your blog and you answer the question, everybody's happy, and you have ongoing good content to use. In addition to that, there is a book that I really found valuable when we were doing some of this with a former MSP I was working with. There's a book called They Ask You Answer. It's all based on this very concept, right? You're trying to answer questions that your prospects may have so that when they come to your website, they can answer some of their own questions. And the more time they spend on your website and learning about you, the more likely they are to do business with you. So that's a really solid book. I'll drop the link below in the description of the video as well. So the next thing is, I want you to consider upgrading your website. Now, I'm not talking about a redesign. I suppose you could if you want to, especially if your existing website was pretty vanilla. But I'm really talking more about upgrading the kind of that base content and menu structure and those kinds of things, right? You really want to make sure that visitors to your website come and they learn who you are, how you help businesses like theirs, the problems that you solve, those kinds of things, right? Make it obvious to them how you can help them. Don't talk about technology necessarily. Don't get into VoIP or EDR or these kind of things. Talk about, we can help you with your phone issues. We can help you with security. We can help you with productivity, like those kinds of things. Think about your target prospect, not technical stuff, right? Think about how you help their businesses solving technology challenges in a business way, not so much, we do all this cool technical stuff. Of course you do, but they don't care and they don't understand it. So don't talk in a language that they don't understand. Now, the other piece with this website stuff is that if you are going to do this work or redesign or those kinds of things, don't do that work yourself, especially at this stage. Hire it out, save up some money if you have to, but have somebody else do the actual design work, have somebody else do the actual like building of the website. You have more important things to do than to putt around in HTML, CSS, or WordPress, or whatever, kind of developing your website. It's not a good use of your time as a business owner, so don't do it. The last thing in this section as it relates to kind of leveling up your marketing efforts is to keep on the LinkedIn side of the world, but this is where you might consider a third-party tool or a LinkedIn tool like Sales Navigator or some other third-party tools that can help you kind of like get more data out of LinkedIn and make some more connections that way. Again, I wouldn't go too crazy here. I wouldn't go too deep. I wouldn't spend a ton of time or money on it. Unless you're getting results already from some of the early stuff, but you still want to continue building that LinkedIn presence and those kinds of things, and also do things like comment meaningfully on some prospects, posts and those kinds of things, especially if you've met them in the world. Like, be present in their world a little bit, have your name show up. All those little things will help over time as well. The one thing you don't want to do on the LinkedIn side of the world, though, is connect with somebody and go right into a sales pitch, right? That will turn people off as fast as anything else in the world. So make sure that if you connect with somebody and you want to send them a message, great. Ask them how you can help them. Make a conversation out of it versus, hey, I'm an IT provider, here's my sales pitch. Because they don't want it. Nobody wants that. Everybody gets frustrated with it, so don't be the person that does it as well. If you think about the weekly things you want to do as it relates to prospecting and marketing, it's really still very similar to the earlier one with a bit of an addition, right? So you're still going to networking meetings, you're still meeting people in the world for coffee, lunch, whatever. You're still writing a blog post a week, but also you're thinking about some thought leadership stuff and trying to kind of put that thought leadership content out in the world and start kind of building that up a little bit. I think if you're doing that at this stage, you are doing a great job. All right, so now you are off and running, right? You hit that $1 million, you've done some cool stuff with your sales and marketing and prospecting, in those earlier stages. Let's talk about leveling those kind of things up, because I think once you hit that $1 million stage, you can start thinking about hiring somebody to kind of help with some of the sales and marketing stuff. It could be a contractor, it could be an agency, it could be an employee, whatever. But this is kind of where that might start happening. And so let's talk about that for a little bit. All right, so from a prospecting side of the world, I want you to keep doing what you've been doing, right? Networking meetings, thought leadership marketing, those kinds of things. Those are really important pieces. But I want you to think about layering on doing something like webinars, seminars, or lunch and learns, where you are trying to bring people directly to you as it relates to the content you've got and the thought leadership you got going on. And you can still use that same content for some of this stuff. But the idea here is that it's a little bit easier to invite people to a webinar, seminar, or a lunch and learn to learn from you versus having a one-on-one meeting. So especially if you start that cold calling style of the world, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, this is a really nice way of getting people in at a relatively low risk to them, at least from their perception anyway. So you can host your own seminar, webinar, or lunch and learn, or you can partner with somebody else in your circles of influence, right? You can bring your clients and they can bring their clients, and now you have prospects from each side. And of course you can invite prospects as well, but you can kind of share some of the content load. You can share some of the financial costs, especially if you're doing a lunch and learn, by bringing a partner in, and you can make it a little bit more robust of a session, right? I think those are some really smart ways of doing things as it relates to kind of sharing some of that load. So that's a pretty solid prospecting side of the world now, because now all the networking, all of the relationships you've built have yielded a lot of really good stuff. This is where we shift a little bit more into that marketing side of the world and some of those kind of things. So let's talk about that next. This is where your size and a little bit of extra revenue is going to help you expand your sales and marketing efforts, because you have a few extra resources to do so. So this is where you can potentially hire a contractor, hire an employee or an agency to kind of help you move the marketing things forward. In order for this to be successful, you really need to have a target client profile defined, right? This is important when you're very small, and this is important when you're very large. It's actually more important as you grow and as you outsource pieces of the marketing puzzle, because you want to make sure that the people you're having help you know who the right clients are. You don't want to have an agency or an employee aim at prospects that are just bad fits. That you could solve that problem with a clear definition of what makes a good client for your company, right? So make sure you have the target client profile dialed in and dialed in well. So when you think about hiring somebody at this stage, this could be someone to help you with cold calling. This could be someone to help you with social media. This could be someone to help write blogs and newsletters and those kinds of things. It doesn't really matter which direction you want to head here, but it's important that you want to pick one or maybe two and not try and do all of the things. And if you're going to have someone help you with cold calling, for example, this is a great opportunity for them to help kind of fill up the rooms if you're going to do webinars, seminars, or lunch and learns, right? And by fill up the room, I don't mean hundreds of people. I mean a dozen or a couple dozen people that can come to these things and actually care about what you have to say for that, 45 minutes, an hour, or whatever, right? That's a really solid way of getting people to actually want to engage on the phone with them. And really, again, if you're teaching somebody something, it's a whole lot easier to get people in the door, whether it's a virtual door in a webinar or a physical door in a seminar or lunch and learn. This stage is also where you might want to start thinking about Google Ads or some of those retargeting ads where you get the ads that kind of pop up and follow people around as they move throughout the internet. But this is one of those things where you kind of need that website content for that to be valuable, because you don't want them coming to a website that kind of stinks still. So you want to make sure that when they come to your website, based on some of those ads, that there's something there compelling enough for them to want to stick around on your website for a minute to figure out who you are and really how to reach out to you and those kinds of things. And at this stage, your options really become numerous, right? You can pick a number of different things. And this is where you want to make sure you're focusing your efforts for some time, right? You don't want to try cold calling for 2 weeks and go, that didn't work, I didn't get any leads, let's move on to something else, right? You want to spend 6 months or so in the different sections of these things. And so this is maybe you try cold calling for a few months and see what results you get. If you get results, cool. And if not, either tweak it or move on to something different, right? And the idea though is that you want to make sure you're managing this appropriately, especially if you're hiring in an outside resource, if you're hiring an agency or someone to do the calling for you, for example. You want to make sure that you're auditing their calls and you're managing that relationship. And as the leads come in, presuming you get leads, that you are making sure that they understand what makes a good lead and what makes a not good lead, and that they understand that this is a great lead for these reasons and this lead stunk for these reasons, right? You want to make sure that they understand what that looks like, whether they're an employee of yours, whether they're an agency or any of those kind of things. You need to give that feedback real time or as real time as possible, and you can't do that if you aren't paying attention, right? It's too easy for you to hire a person or an agency and say, all right, you got it, I'm gonna go do a bunch of other stuff, and then you kind of ignore that they exist and you wonder, hey, where's my leads? Well, if you're not actively managing them, that's on you, not on them. So understand that you need to manage whatever this resource looks like. It's clear that there's no easy button for marketing, because if there was, every MSP would have a completely full sales funnel, and that's just simply not the case. I'm going to drop a few different links from Harrison Barron from Growth Generators down below for some of his videos and some of his content, because he's a really good thought leader in this world. I'll also drop a couple other marketing resources down below as well. But ultimately, this is a thing that's going to take you some time and effort. And so get on it now and continue marching on forward by building out your marketing content and build out your prospecting and build out your relationships. In the meantime, if you want to see my prospecting video, that you can find that up here. And if you want to see my video all about making money via AI, you can click up here and see that one as well. Thanks for coming on this ramble with me, and I hope to see you on the next one.